I guarantee you that after watching this tutorial, you're going to have more confidence and you're going to have a better understanding of how to execute any kind of fade, along with being more confident and understanding how to utilize your clippers. This is going to be how to do a mid-scan fade. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. The tools that I'm going to be using today is a clipper, a trimmer, and a shaver. But before we get into the tutorial, let's take the time real quick to really understand the tools. So the clipper is going to be the main one we use to execute the fade. And most clippers come with a lever on the side. Whenever you see my lever in this position, that means that it's open, which means that the top blade is farthest away from the bottom blade, which will cut less hair. Whenever you place the lever in this position, that is considered to be closed. And now the top blade and the bottom blade are close to each other. So if you guessed it, you're going to be cutting more hair like this. Once again, that is closed and that is open. And then on the blade, notice how one side is completely flat. Then it has a beveled edge that tilts in a little bit more. For the most part of the haircut, I'm going to be using this beveled edge. But as I work my way to the top, I'm going to be using this flat side, which is going to allow the beveled edge to rest off the head, not cutting as much hair. That way we can begin fading into the top. And the motion that I'm going to be using is resting the clipper flat on the head and sliding up and down. Don't go into the head like this, and don't try to sit here and flick out like that either. That's going to create a lot of inconsistency. Once again, lay it flat and just slide up and down. Now a trimmer, on the other hand, only has a flat side on the blade. And with the trimmer, we're going to be using that to do the hairline, to create our guidelines, and even to debulk some of the hair off. And then the shaver, we're going to use that to completely skin out the hair. Okay, so kicking off this tutorial, I'm going to start with my trimmer. This is a different trimmer than the gold one. This one is not zero gapped, which means my lines are going to be a lot softer. But like I said, on this, whenever you're making your first guideline, you want to go in this angle. That way you can really make a precise line. And at first, I'm going to be using the full blade to create the line. Then as I start to curve the line down towards the back of the head, I'm only going to be using this much of the blade, which that's really going to allow me to create this curved shapes. And you can always switch sides of the blade, which is most comfortable for you. So as soon as we create that line, we're going to flip the trimmer over. Now we're going to be using a different angle of the blade, which is going to be resting on the flat side. Notice how I am tilting in a little bit more, really digging in, ensuring that I get every single piece of hair. If I were to have the blade completely flat like this, it would get some of the hair, but it wouldn't get most of it. So that's why you really want to tilt in and make sure you get every single hair to make it as smooth and even as possible. That way you can now go in with the shaver, and the shaver can easily pick up any of the stubble left behind. This is a double full shaver, which means it's going to cover a higher area. And whenever you're using the shaver, you don't want to go all the way up to the line that you created with the trimmer. You want to stop right below it, about a 1/4 inch away from it. And that's going to create a subsection right underneath that trimmer line. So now you're going to go with the other side of the shaver, place it on the line, and this time go with the grain. And just like that, that's going to help you fade out that subsection. Now that I have my first guideline set in, let's talk about why I created it like this. Whenever you're executing a haircut, you have to keep in mind that a fade is not a one-size-fits-all. I really like to look at the head shape. And whenever I'm looking at the head shape, I'm looking at the parietal ridge, the occipital bone, and the temple. In this case, it's parietal ridge, so right up here in the back. Notice how the comb leaves the head a lot lower. So that lets me know that the parietal ridge dropped towards the back, which is why with my guideline, it began going up straight, then dropping towards the back, because I really want to stay parallel with the parietal ridge. And that's helping me create some more weight near the top. And at the same time, creating a fade that best contours his head shape. Now, let's go ahead and grab our clippers. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and open the lever all the way. And of course, we're going to be using the beveled edge to really dig in and slide up and down. Whenever you're creating these sections, like I said, you want to slide up and down, but you also want to stop and create a very harsh line. That way you will not get lost in the fade. And same thing with the trimmer. Anytime that you want to create a curved shape, keep in mind to only use the corner of the blade to help you do so. Now that we have the first section done, notice how I was able to stay parallel with the bottom line that we created at first and with the parietal ridge. So now let's begin by fading that out. And we're simply going to place our lever to the close position again. And this time, instead of using the full blade, we're only going to be using that much of the blade. That way we can really work in small areas and control the fade. But this time, just stay at the very bottom of the line. And we're going to begin by working our way up that section by simply opening the lever one notch, going about a 1/4 inch higher every single time that we open up the lever. So by the time you have the lever all the way open, you should be at the very top of that section, which is originally what we begin with. So I really recommend that you work in small sections. Fade out this section first, then do out the ear, then in the back. Once again, that's really going to help you stay in control of the fade. But now with this whole section faded out, we can move on to creating our next section. And this time we're going to be using angle number 1. And we're going to simply follow the same principle, making the section about 1/2 inch wide, still making sure to stay parallel with the parietal ridge. Now that I created that next section, you should be left with a line right in between the 0 and the number 1. Which of course, with this hair being a lot lighter, you can't really see that line as well, but we know it's there. So all you simply have to do is switch into the half guard, close the lever all the way, and instead of having your blade set in like this, tilt it all the way out, and just point cut into that line. That way you don't run the risk of pushing the fade up any higher. Notice I'm still only using the sliding up and down technique. And now with that section done, all we have to do now is connect the sides into the top. And depending on how much hair they have, it's going to determine which size guard you use. On him, his length is at about a number 2. The main thing you have to keep in mind when fading into the top is that you now want to utilize the flat side of the blade. That way the beveled edge can rest off the hair and you just want to slide straight off the head. You never want to dig in this direction, because the moment you go past the parietal ridge, then you're going to take a lot of this weight out, which is going to make his head look too round. So literally just let the parietal ridge glide your clipper off the head, going in a straight angle like this. And still following the head shape, the clipper is going to leave the head a lot lower near the back. But notice how going in this angle is literally already starting to fade into the top hair for us. So now we're left with the line right in between the number 1 and the number 2. So it would only make sense if we use a 1.5 to come right in between those two. And once again, I'm only using the corner of the guard to really be able to dig in and create some separation within the hair to start erasing that line. And now that's faded out. But to really make the fade blurrier, I'm going to go back in detail, pretty much repeating the same steps. But this time, I'm not going to be using any guard. I'm going to go in without a guard and literally angle my clipper out. And whenever you're point cutting, you want to be careful. You want to tilt your clipper out as much as possible. And all I'm doing is trying to create some separation between those darker, coarse hair. That way the fade can have a feather-like effect. Now on this next part, keep in mind that not everybody wants an edge up, meaning not everybody wants a defined straight line across the forehead, on the corner, or even on the C cup. But my guy here does, so we're going to give him a nice lineup. I'm going to be using the trimmer that is zero gapped. And whenever it comes to using the trimmer, I'm going to be placing my blade flat, really angling in like this, and then I'm going to pull away. The way that works is that the back blade is the blade that creates a line, and the bottom blade is what actually cuts the hair. So the back blade is literally just creating a line for us, but whenever we slide this way, the hair is actually being cut. And now when it comes to doing the C cup on the side, I'm only going to be using this much of the blade, placing my index finger on the forehead to keep me balanced and stabilized, and I'm going to create a round curved shape. Now with this hair being a lot lighter, that's where fade placement really comes into play, because I really had to place a fade away from the C cup in order to keep this area darker to be able to edge them up. But fade placement is going to be a whole different tutorial. But by following those steps, you should end up with a blurry fade that really contours to their head shape, giving them an overall better silhouette for their haircut. But for more videos like this and shorter tutorials, be sure to check out my TikTok, where I post daily educational videos. But anyways, what do you think, bro?
I think everybody subscribe to you.
Heck yeah.